APD, Commander McCrae. I want to make you a doctor today. Sorry. Commander McCrae, you're going to make a presentation on the officer-involved accidents report that Natalie, are you making the report or is Natalie?
Natalie's doing it herself.
Natalie's doing it. Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, I would do it.
Okay. Natalie's been working very hard on this. We asked her, well, I'm sure she'll recap what we asked. We asked to get some more information on these accidents, which we get each month. We have a concern about that, and of course there was recently a very terrible accident in which a child was killed. As a result of that accident, another child injured by a police officer in pursuit of getting to a crime scene. We asked, if I remember correctly, to have the information we were getting, which we said, I think the cases were 66 accidents in April, if I'm right. And it was a large number, but we didn't have anything to compare it to. So we asked that the city give us some other cities of like size police departments, and so we would have something to compare it to. And Natalie Davila has prepared that report. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, board members. So I have contacted 8 police departments. I've heard back from 5. 3 of those police departments that I did not hear from, we should wait till we get that information because their city size, their square miles, and the number of officers are closer to what our department is compared to the departments that I actually got information from. So, but I will give you some information tonight that I have gotten so far. Today, I contacted Sarah Masick with our crime analysis unit, and she was able to tell me that we had 42,441 police reports for crash accidents with and without injuries for the city of Albuquerque. Out of that, I calculated we had 326 that were officer related within the same time frame. So the time frame was January of 2016 through May of 2017. So that's about 0.8% of the total reports received. The other information, so do you want to know the departments I actually got information from? Or?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was hoping that we would have information to compare our data with
so here's
other cities.
The issue with that. Some of these departments don't track whether the crash was preventable or non-preventable, which makes that a little bit more difficult because then I have to go and find other departments who actually track it this way. 2 of the departments that we got information from do not track it preventable or non-preventable. Let's see. And
so what you're saying is that they don't track the same thing that we track.
yeah, they
So
don't.
there's no
They're not
we can't compare the
classified
two.
whether the officer's at fault or not.
Okay.
Oh, the 3 you're waiting for?
No, out of the 5 that I've received information for, 2 of the departments do not track whether the employee is at fault,
And 3 do?
and 3 do.
Okay, so let's hear about the 3 that do.
Okay, so Oklahoma City, for 2016, they had 307 accidents with their officers. 158 were preventable. 149 were non-preventable. The issue with Oklahoma City is when I requested the information, the person who is in charge of tracking the data had stopped. So they had to go in and they gave me a whole spreadsheet. So I don't have any 2017 data. They said, sorry, but this is all we have. So I thought 2016 was better than nothing for them, right? Portland had 123 for 2016. 63 of those were deemed preventable and 55 non-preventable, and 5 they determined was not an accident.
Meaning,
meaning that it was reported as an accident, but through their review board, they determined it was not an accident.
meaning it was on purpose? What is, I don't understand what that means.
That's the information I'm getting. So
Okay.
what I mean, we need to go and ask clarifying questions, which takes time for some of these departments to get back. But that's what they told me. It's not an accident, meaning that it was reported as one, but through their review process, it was determined not to be an accident. She didn't really give me much detail other than that.
So Oklahoma City compares to Albuquerque how?
Oklahoma City has 1,169 officers. So they were chosen because of the spreadsheet I had. It was reported that they had 900, which was pretty close to ours. But their city population is 638,367, where ours is 559,277. And this is from the Census Bureau.
So they have more people than we do.
100,000, yes.
And they have
So-
more officers than we do.
Right. So another issue is that this department is not comparable, is their square mileage is 620 square miles that they are in charge of, where ours is 189.
Okay?
So, let's see. We have El Paso Police Department. They had 151 accidents. 35 were deemed preventable. And then I'm assuming the rest were non-preventable. Came in
So we don't know yet how they define preventable, how we define it. There's not,
exactly, which
it's
is
not an apples-to-apples comparison.
correct, which is the issue that I'm having right now, is why there's nothing to produce for you, because our definitions are different than other departments' definitions. I got information for how many crashes were reviewed by their crash review board, not actually how many occurred. So that becomes problematic because...
Are there national statistics on these kinds of things? I mean, like nationally for police associations or police professional groups?
Not that I could find. I looked to see what was out
With
there.
all the
but
crime data there is available in the world?
It's
we
crime
can't-
data, but not vehicle accident data. Yes, I know.
Ms. Davila,
Kidding.
I understand all the information you're giving us, and it's interesting, but with about 50%, roughly, of the accidents being preventable, what's being done to prevent more accidents? Is there training? Is there...
I think that's a Commander McCrae question.
I don't
Okay.
answer training questions on.
But there is
Yes,
a way
ma'am.
to make this more apples to apples, and that is to take the data that we have and to
Correct.
do it on a per cap basis. Okay, so you can
Mm-hmm.
compare apples to apples if you did it per cap.
Right, which is what I'm trying to do. I have contacted these other departments numerous times within the past 2 months, and they're like, okay, we'll get with you. I'm going to check with this, I'm going to check with that, and I'm not getting responses, so I need to move, maybe I need to move on to other departments, but I'm
Yeah, it
not
would-
sure the route you guys would like for this to go, because I'm at a standstill at the moment.
Well, it's disappointing because when I talked to Major Tyler about delaying this from last month to this month, she seemed to think that was going to mean that we would have a real report. And by a report, I mean I would like a written report.
And that was the plan to give
Yeah.
you. But like I said, I have these 3 departments, like even after the last meeting, I'm like, okay, well, I haven't heard from this one. They're telling me it's going to take another 3 weeks. Let me find another department, to which that's what I did. I contacted another department. I contacted Orlando Police Department. And they have put
Well,
me out.
no matter what department, it doesn't matter that they start out exactly the same as us, because they're not going to be exactly the same as us anyway.
Correct.
So my suggestion to you is to open that net wider and do it on a per cap basis. So there's this per capita in terms of population, number of police accidents per population, per officers, whichever way you want to do it, but make it per cap, and that way it is apples to apples, and at least it gives us something. And I would suggest to you that we need a wider net.
Right.
Because obviously responsiveness isn't their long suit, so.
Right. So another option for us is to actually go through our traffic unit, and they might already have. I've contacted them. We received our accident data from them, but I'm assuming they probably have contacts there, so we're going to branch out and have them help with this, because I'm sure they have to talk to each other around the
Yeah, perhaps
network.
Commander McCrae, you and Major Tyler and the board can talk about how to approach this. I really appreciate your effort, Natalie, to try to get this information. I think there needs to be perhaps somebody calling that's in a higher position at APD to get them to respond to you. And if we do that, we may actually get a response. If it's a peer-to-peer at a higher level,
Right.
That may be the way that you'll actually get an answer. And then if you did do it on a per cap basis, either by police officer or whatever, you would be able to get something, you know. And we'll talk about definitions with Commander McCrae and Major Tyler. Okay? Thank you. Now, do you want to answer Dr. Ring's question?
Yeah, so
Please, sir.
if I recall correctly, your question was what is done to prevent further accidents, correct?
Correct.
So we track accidents on an individual basis, obviously between preventable and non-preventable, has been stated before, and those officers that are identified as having subsequent accidents, more than one during the allowable time period, which is, we look at them at a year at a time. They stay on the record for a year, unless it's something more severe, like what has happened. And so we send a notice out to the individual's chain of command, and then it's up to them to either issue out discipline or to send those officers to some sort of remedial training. So to give an example, there's driver training at the academy that's offered. There's an online course which our officers have to go through, and sometimes they'll make them go through that again to teach them better driving skills, things of that nature.
So in this particular case, that everyone, we've been talking about this for months, well before this accident happened. But in the case of this accident, we have seen in the media that there were several accidents that this officer was involved in. And I'm not asking you to speak about this particular case, but I think it's appropriate for us to ask, and we've asked before, how do you track officers' misdeeds in a way that has meaning? And I know that the EIS, is that what it's called? Is not a punitive thing. It's a early warning system or whatever. But I still don't have a satisfactory answer, and I think others on the board may feel the same way, about how does somebody get 6 accidents and how does that continue to occur? The last one, of course, is terrible, but the 5 before it weren't great. And so my question is not about that particular case. My question is how is it that the police department as an entity tracks misdeeds or things that are broken in officer behavior that shows up? How do you track that to have some way of requiring additional training, all of that stuff? My question in this particular case, which I'm not asking you, but I'm just saying my question in my head was, I'm not hearing anything about him having to be trained. I've heard about 5 incidents prior to this one. I haven't heard anything that sets off a bell that says, yeah, but he went to this training, this, they tried. And I don't see that, and I think the community would really like to know more about how that process works, even if you can't talk about this particular case.
Right, so yeah, obviously I can't talk about that particular case, and furthermore, it's not an open administrative case with us yet, it's still in the criminal investigation phase. So we treat accidents or crashes, we don't call them accidents, we call them crashes because most of the time they're not accidents, it's human error that's involved. Those are tracked as a disciplinary issue. So we have a chart of sanctions that list out different kinds of misconduct, and crashes, preventable crashes are listed within that matrix. And so according to the severity of the misconduct, they're assigned timelines, and those timelines are basically, they're established timelines that tell us how long we can use a particular misconduct to determine progressive discipline, if that makes sense. So certain things are in a higher class, and they will be kept on the officer's record to be used for progressive discipline indefinitely. And then other things have a 2-year timeline, and then other things still have a 1-year timeline. So generally, crashes are dealt with on the 1-year timeline. And so what happens is an officer will be disciplined for a crash, and that'll be kept in that 1-year timeline on his record. And then if another one occurs, that's then considered a progressive discipline issue. And so the severity of the punishment is intended to be more severe as time goes on. And so that's how we track them.
And who is responsible? Is it the officer's immediate supervisor? At what point does it trigger beyond the immediate supervisor?
Well, Internal Affairs is charged with informing the chain of command when a crash is to be adjudicated, if you will. And so that chain of command decides the punishment within certain parameters that are laid out in our policy. And then, can you repeat the question?
So if I understood Major Tyler the last time I asked this question, she said that information, the matrix you're talking about, the sanctions, it's a chart that says this is a level 1 or it goes up to a level 7,
right.
And it's progressive discipline, and it's a way to create fairness in discipline. Right. Is why the matrix exists. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so but when asked, okay, somebody makes a misstep, does something, they get disciplined for it, and they get disciplined by their immediate supervisor, correct?
Well, it goes through a chain of command process. It's usually
all the way up
actually
to the chief,
for a crash. No, the crashes are determined unless there's extenuating circumstances or aggravating circumstances. The crash discipline is determined by the commander level, generally.
So it doesn't go past the commander? No,
not in a normal, everyday course of business crash, no.
Okay, so explain to me how we get from that to the process in which the police department is paying attention to these things.
So crashes are held within their own category within the early intervention system. And so those are one of the areas where an alert is triggered if they get a certain amount. And I don't know what the threshold level for crashes is. That's probably two or three. So taken in conjunction with any other kind of misconduct, or it doesn't even have to be misconduct, other things that happen in officers' duties, like they may get like a tort claim or things of that nature. So all that is taken cumulative, and those alerts are generated on a weekly basis. So they can get an alert for just having too many crashes in and of themselves. It's kind of like a reminder to that chain that, hey, this officer's been in 3 crashes. You need to take a more in-depth, big picture look at this. Or it could be in conjunction with other kinds of behavior, just saying, okay, he's been in a couple of crashes and these other things. You need to take a more comprehensive look and see if
and the alert goes to whom?
That alert goes to the commander and the lieutenant and the sergeant. They all have a part in that affected officer chain of command. Yes, they all have a function in that process.
Okay, and it doesn't go beyond the commander?
Generally, no, but it can. What
would make it go beyond the commander?
If issue was identified that some kind of intervention needed to be done on the part of that officer, then that information will be relayed up to generally like the major level.
Okay. I hope you can appreciate that that's really confusing
Right,
for
well-
those vets out here, because if you hear that someone's had 5 events before a fatal crash, then you are wondering, how did it get to 5, okay? And that's the question I'm asking you. From a systemic point of view, how does something like that happen without there being a
Well,
mistake somewhere in the process?
So without referring to a specific case, I can just say that things, we may be talking about 5 crashes or 4 crashes. You would have to look at the time frame for those crashes. It may be over the course of 6 or 7 years, or so the system, the alert system, deals with crashes within the time frame. So I guess the short answer is we wouldn't look at that cumulatively until
So I could be, if I was an officer, I could be in a crash every year, and as long as I metered out that year, I got a clean slate when I go into year 2.
Well, for purposes of the early intervention system, that is correct, but those crashes are going to be in their internal affairs file for forever. But just the way the system's set up to trigger something, yes, that is actually correct.
I want to make sure the other board members have a chance to ask questions.
Commander McRae, this has been one of my bugaboos ever since I came on to the POB. To me, it's an issue in part of money and resources. And if you consider that the average crash, at fault or not at fault, costs $5,000, and that's an insurance figure, $300 a year costs $150,000 to the city of Albuquerque. That's not chump change. And that'd be nice to have that for positive resources in your department rather than paying to constantly bang out bumpers. And I guess I don't understand why it's not taken more seriously to educate our officers and prevent future crashes. You say they might be sent to driving school, or they might have to watch an internet video or something of that nature. Well, if I were involved in 5 crashes, my insurance company would drop me. If I worked for Comcast and was driving a panel truck for them and I wrecked 5 of them, they'd take me out of the panel truck and I'd be sitting in the office. So I don't understand the lack of seriousness with this.
Well, I would correct that statement and say we're very serious about accidents and crashes, just like we are with any other misconduct. And in any case, you're not going to get to 5 crashes without some kind of intervention. So something's going to happen. I mean, you're going to be disciplined. You're going to be reminded through the disciplinary process that if you are at fault for an accident or a crash, that's not acceptable. So, I mean, similar to your example about being dropped by your insurance, I mean, things are going to happen to that officer. It's not just that we don't just say, okay, well, they were in a crash and that's it. I mean, something is done.
From a communication standpoint, I would say that this is a really vivid example of a communication breakdown between the police department and the community, and one that I think bears attention. So in our meeting that we have with you and Major Tyler, we're going to have this conversation. I want to flesh it out even more. I want to make sure and give everybody else on the board a chance to speak to this. But I think that this is an opportunity to help the people of this community understand how people are held accountable, how officers are held accountable in this arena. And that might shed some light on accountability overall. And I would make the suggestion that we take that conversation seriously, because I do think it's important. Who
Absolutely.
else wants to add things or ask questions?
I did want to say something. I was just listening to, the description of the whole process, and it was very convoluted. It's like if A happens, B may happen, but usually B happens when A happens. Like it's very confusing. So I think if there was a way for you to put it on paper for us to see the entire process, I mean that might be in a struggle in itself, and that doesn't help the holding up to the process itself. But I couldn't understand the process just for you describing me. It should be, I think the simpler the process, the more effective the process will be in discipline and holding people accountable.
Sure.
We'll have a chance to visit some more about that. Does anybody else have any questions for Commander McGregor?
Oops, I'm sorry. Don't wait, just wait. Don't do that.
Got to get away from your book.
That's fine, that's fine. I think that my only comment is, it's a comment, and I'm a little bit concerned because when I'm listening to the discussion, I think what my worry is that it's a management issue. It doesn't sound, I think you must be you have policy, you have things to do, you have a way of approaching all of that, and you're not expressing it very well. And as Member Cruz was saying, it was very convoluted, but a little deeper than that, what I'm thinking is it makes me worry about the efficiency of how data is constantly not collected correctly, and it speaks to an analysis, that somehow a task analysis for management. And I say that with, it's because I really want it to work. I really want how we do this to work. And defend what we do, make people understand what we do in terms of the police department, that you do take it seriously. I have no doubt that you take it seriously, and that you know people who are accident prone, or are bad actors or whatever. I think you're aware of those things, but I'm constantly amazed that, for example, there's not a crosswalk from risk management to what we do in practice. That's just missing somehow. I mean, what the chair has pointed out in terms of a communication is not only a miscommunication for the public to understand, it's one internally. And I'm not sure how to address that, but I wanted to express my concern about it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Commander McCrae. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.